That's just proper 2021 protocol, right? You start on mute. So Rody, I think this is the kickoff, isn't it?
I would love it if we could kick it off, and I will start. Just I know it's your show, Nicholas and Marshall and Shelley and Will, but I just wanted to thank you so much for hosting this for Bowdoin. I think the turnout tonight is a great showing for us, and everyone's really excited about this. And for us, it's the kickoff to homecoming weekend. We have a number of events on campus over the weekend, and they are all outside. So this is the only one that we're actually kind of inside, even if it is remotely across the country. So thank you very much for helping us celebrate and kick off homecoming weekend. And with that, Nicholas and Shelley, I'll turn it to you.
All right. Well, go you Bears. Thank you all very much for joining us. No matter what time zone you're in, I think most people are 7 o'clock. You guys enabled day drinking for us here on the West Coast, starting at 4 o'clock. But I'm here, Nicholas Miller, class of 2002. My beautiful wife, Shelley, was Chessie, now Miller, right? I'm fading in and out, aren't I? Trying to get back in here. Shelley's class of 03, and then Marshall will be popping, he's on, but he'll be popping on the highlight here in a little bit from class of 2000 to present this afternoon and kick off, as Rody said, the homecoming events for Bowdoin for 2021. So the format of this is going to be about 45 minutes of, first of all, us talking, and then we're going to hand over to Will, who's going to show a video and speak about not only the wines, but about the vineyards and the Central Coast in a bit. And then we'll leave some time at the end, hopefully about 10 minutes for Q&A. Due to the large amount of attendees here, even though we're all on camera, we would ask that, one, if you guys don't all mind keeping it on mute during the presentation. But for those of you not familiar with Zoom, can't imagine there's a lot of you out there, but in case you're not, there is a chat function in the bottom middle portion of your Zoom screen, in which please feel free throughout the presentation to ask questions or make comments through there, and we'll try to monitor that as opposed to going live and talking, just due to the number of attendees that we have on this Zoom meeting. And so with that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Marshall. So we're going to try to highlight him, replace spotlight. There you go, Marshall Miller.
Oh, good to see so many polar bears. This is a whole lot of fun. Thanks for including us. So as a brief history of the Nacido vineyards, wanted to start off that our father and our uncle planted the vineyards in 1973. And this was the beginning of the modern day wine era in the Central Coast of California. So there had been a wine culture during its mission era or whatnot. Prohibition had brought that to an end. And in the early 70s, it's coming back. For most of the vineyard's history, what we have focused on is growing and selling wine grapes to other wineries. And so today, Bien Nacido Vineyards is the most vineyard designated vineyard in the world. And so let me explain what that means, is that it has the largest number of wineries who designate that their fruit comes from this particular vineyard on their label. And so anytime you see a label like Aubin Clement, Coupé, Duckhorn, Foxen, Paul Lotto, and it says on the top is their winery's name, and down on the lower part of the label, it says Bien Nacido, they would be buying their grapes and sourcing their fruit from this vineyard. And so we didn't start making our own wine from these grapes until the late 2000s. So it's a relatively recent thing. When Nicholas, Shelley, and I were all at Bowdoin, we were grape growers only. And so we're pretty excited to be able to share our wines here with you today.
All right, I am off mute this time, right?
Yeah.
To start. Well, great, thanks, Marshall. Yeah, so at this point, I want to introduce Master Sommelier Will Costello, who's going to be kind of the MC for this evening and walk us through the wines and the trip to the vineyards. And so we finally get to get in the tasting portion. If you haven't already, please pour that first glass of Viognier. So those of you that aren't familiar with the designation of Master Sommelier, there are actually only 269 Master Soms in the entire world. So it's a very elite group and probably one of the highest achievements in the world of hospitality. So we're very lucky to have Will with us. And so to put that as kind of in a frame of reference, 269 people is less than the number of people that have ever been to space. And a little closer to home, it's less than the number of Bowdoin students that are in each of our classes, right? Which is kind of the butt of every Bowdoin joke, how small our classes were. But just to kind of stress, it is a very elite group, very impressive of the accomplishments of getting there. And so, who is Will? So before joining our team at the Miller Family Wine Company, Will was the wine director at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Las Vegas. And prior to that, he ran the wine program as the maitre d' of San Diego's only Michelin-starred restaurant, which was the Addison in the Grand Del Mar. Will is married to his wife, Yvette, and lives with their 4 dogs and fairly newborn, I guess going on a year now, son, Liam, in Las Vegas. And has climbed some of the highest mountains in the world, including Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Denai, I should have asked him how to say that ahead of time. Aconcagua. Let us know, Will, what it is. And so also, much like Shelley and Marshall, is a certified commercial pilot as well, and bonded over that. So with that, Will, you want to get us into the wine tasting portion, please?
Absolutely. And I think someone may be able to add me as the
I gotta
spotlight.
find you on my top screen here. Where are you?
So I'm going to introduce everything by showing everyone a video, and I'll actually have 2 videos that I'll ask you to watch. The first one we're going to do today, it's only about 5 minutes long. It kind of gives you a beautiful aerial overview of what the Nacido vineyard looks like, with a really wonderful voiceover by yours truly. But then the second video, as Nicholas alluded to, covers the Master Sommelier exam. So the Master Sommelier exam, we only do it once a year. It has been going on since 1977. And so when you think about the number of people who've passed since 1977, it's quite small. We actually just last week gave 2 new pins out to one gentleman in California and one gentleman in Houston. So it was just 2 more people who were added to that list recently. But the video that I'll ask you to watch it's easy to find almost anywhere online, Netflix and Apple Plus and all of these. It's called SOM, S-O-M-M. And SOM is it's kind of an hour-and-a-half documentary that takes you inside what the exam is. And to put it in perspective, it took me 8 years in total to pass this exam. I took the first, second, and third levels fairly quickly. And by the time I got to the master exam, which on average has a pass percentage of only 3%, Forbes magazine has called it the most difficult exam in the world to pass. I ended up taking it 4 tries at the master exam. And, you know, thankfully in 2015, I was able to pass, and 7 people were in my class that year. So I'm sort of getting closer now to a decade of being a master sommelier than when I was hitting the books. But one thing that never fades is the love and passion for wine. And with that, you know, I hope you have something poured in your glass. This is the Nacido Viognier. I'm going to share my screen briefly so we can take a look at a beautiful video of the Nacido, and make sure I'm sharing sound too. There we go.
My name is Will Costello, Master Sommelier, and I'm the Estates Ambassador for Nacido and Solomon Hills Estates Wines. I'll be telling you a little bit about the Nacido Vineyard. With wine grape production dating back to as far as the 1830s, prior to California becoming a state, Santa Maria Valley and the greater Santa Barbara County are some of California's oldest wine-growing regions. The hallmark of the area is the cool ocean breeze, which allows this region to remain one of the coolest in the United States, and is the perfect home to our vineyards. Santa Maria Valley AVA was the first of the American viticultural areas in Santa Barbara, and Nacido Vineyard amongst the very first vineyards planted. Santa Barbara is particularly special geologically speaking, as the region is considered part of a transverse, or east and west running mountain range, and is the only of its kind along a coastline. Millions of years of plate tectonics and violent upheavals of volcanic ocean floor have created a wind funnel, which allows for slow and even ripening of the grapes. Over the millennia, the once ocean floor was lifted to expose the bedrock of limestone, shale, sand, and diatomaceous earth, which lend to the purity and minerality of the wines. The Nacido, which translates to well-born, was planted in 1973, when nothing much was established in terms of grape growing. It was with this understanding that Bob and Steve Miller decided to plant Pinot Noir and Chardonnay without grafting. Knowing the scourge of phylloxera which devastated the European wine industry in the 1880s, they pushed forward and planted the vineyard on their own roots. Few vineyards around the world can claim almost 300 acres of ungrafted vines still in production. Today we have over 600 planted acres, but this early gamble paid off, and much of the production of the estate wines used these old and ungrafted vines. Bien Nacido sits 17.5 miles from the Pacific Ocean, in a wind corridor that runs from the Pacific coast to Bakersfield and into the hottest location on Earth, the Mojave Desert. The wind often picks up in the early afternoon and works as a cooling effect with the help of the wind and the naturally cool daytime temperatures. The Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Syrah represent true cool climate flavors, wines with vibrancy, energy, and structure, which always show drinkability when young, but are eager to develop complexity over time. The first vintage of the estate wines was produced in 2006, after almost 35 years of solely selling grapes. Our approach to making wines from this iconic site begins with honing in on the right rows and blocks, so as to tell the story of the whole vineyard. Chardonnay from Block W shows the minerality of compressed shale, and the Syrah from Block Z highlights the sunshine and herbs of this elevated site. And each represent a single view of Bien Nacido from an individual block. The Pinot Noir, on the other hand, is a true blend of blocks and flavors. The estate Pinot uses no less than 6 different blocks from around the property, blending the exposed limestone of Block 40 with the densely spaced San Vicente and the old and young vines of Block 1, G, N, and Q. Each of these offer their own chord, which harmonize in concert when blended to create the estate Pinot Noir. At the heart of this 2,000-acre site is the Ontiveros adobe. This iconic 2-story mud brick adobe is the emblem which adorns the labels of the estate wines of Bien Nacido. Hidden from the wind by the western ridge and positioned next to the Cuyama River, this home for more than 130 years is a reminder of the charm and character of the Bien Nacido estate.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It worked out right. Sound was good. Give me some feedback here because I was watching a beautiful video.
We heard you. Yeah, we got it. Sound, audio.
So getting into the specific wines here, I wanted to start off not by only talking about the wines, but also how to best serve and what to serve along some of these wines. So I have the 2020 Viognier in the glass. This is important to note because in your pack, you received 1 2020 wine and 2 2019s. This is for a few reasons. First, white wines, really the best thing about them is that you can harvest and harness their vibrancy. And especially a grape like Viognier, which really does have so much exuberance to it in the glass. We want to not only harvest that and ferment it and bottle it young so that it can showcase as much as it can about the wine itself, but we also want to make sure that this is a taste of how that vintage was, especially because its brethren or sisterin, I don't know if wine is a boy or a girl, but while they're sitting in barrel, are waiting almost another whole year in oak, kind of coming together and creating the mastery of what these Bien Nacido wines are. And so we like to release the Viognier early as one of these young, sort of flashy, vibrant drinking wines. And for those of you who have had Viognier before, Viognier is, and I was thinking about this earlier, it's sort of one of these grape varietals that is kind of like every, teen movie that we've ever seen, right? There's the girl who walks down the corridor of the high school and all the guys turn their heads and she's the, homecoming queen and she's the captain of the cheerleader squad. And then there's her wallflower friend who wears glasses, who's also, of course, because she's in a movie, beautiful. And, the one doesn't get any attention, the other one does. Viognier literally is both of those in one. And it's funny because if you harvest it early, it can be shy, it can be demure, it can showcase all of the kind of flower tones and the peach and nectarine and pineapple, but you kind of have to coax it out. You give it a little more air, you give it a little more time, and it really does kind of become that girl who took off her glasses and let down her hair and everyone goes, whoa, she was beautiful all along. The other one though, is that if you let this grape in the vineyard ripen and start to pick up richness by virtue of sunshine, it is as soon as you pop the cork, you can smell it from 20 feet away. And the interesting thing is Bien Nacido actually has 2 different locations on our single vineyard that can do both of those. Bien Nacido is sort of shaped like a V shape with a valley that is kind of tucked away from that wind that I talked about. And then you have a benchland. And so for us, we have the opportunity to make a decision. Do we want a little bit of, the head of cheerleader, and we want a little bit of the wallflower, so that we can showcase in one bottling the best of both worlds? And I really think, I popped this wine about 6:45 Eastern, and it's been sitting in my glass, and it is just getting more and more perfumed. It's not that perfume that, you can tell when someone sprayed on 2 or 3 too many pumps, and you smell them coming way before they make it there. But it's that subtle perfume. It really is fresh flowers. To me, it's like a night jasmine kind of quality, right? The star jasmine that in the afternoon, after it got a ton of sunshine, it makes your whole backyard kind of take up that smell. It kind of has the Easter lily, or, you definitely get the high aromatics of it without it being aggressive in your face. But the most amazing thing, and we should all take a sip right now, me, because I'm talking so much, and everyone so we can taste along, is that it has a freshness that makes it so enjoyable with food. This is a wine that really makes you want to go back for another taste. And I think it's because we use a good portion of the part of the vineyard that is cold and much cooler. It allows us to harvest it without too much of that sunshine, and gives us a backbone, a balance to make you want to take another sip and another sip and another sip. Some of the things that I really like to drink with this in terms of food, think about anything you would put a lemon or a lime on. For example, I live in Las Vegas and spent most of my childhood and years in high school and college in Southern California. Pork tacos, which they call carnitas, right, that are lightly fried, and you have a little bit of guacamole on there, that you squeeze some lime juice. It is the perfect accompaniment to something like Viognier, because the Viognier has the body and richness to kind of give us the texture to match something as heavy as pork, but the acidity to cut through it. And that, to me, is the beauty of something like Viognier, right? Most of us love Chardonnay. Most of us have had Chardonnay before, but Viognier is one of those grapes that, definitely stands outside of the norm. You can't walk into just any grocery store and be able to find a bottle of Viognier, or if you can, it's going to be one singular one. This is a wine that, definitely we're proud and that we make only about 100 cases of. How we make this wine is interesting as well. There is no new oak. When you're tasting this, you should be getting all of the floral tones, all of the beautiful sort of aromatics, and you should get a little bit of this peach, tropical apricot kind of tone, a little bit of underripe pineapple, but you shouldn't be getting any oak. This is because we use 3 barrels that have been used for years and years, usually coming from our Chardonnay program. The more that you use a barrel, the less intense the spices and the toasted oak and the smoke get, because each time you put wine in it, the wine takes away some of those smoky flavors, some of those spices. And after 2 or 3 years, we end up with what we call a neutral barrel. Neutral barrels shouldn't do anything but give it a place to sort of breathe before you end up bottling it. So we use 3 barrels of those. And for those of you who don't know, each barrel can produce approximately 25 cases of wine. So we have 3 of them that have neutral oak, and we have 1 stainless steel drum. The reason that you do something like a stainless steel drum is because we want to harness the ultimate precision and freshness of something like this Viognier, because we never let it see any oxygen, because there's a little bit of pores inside of a barrel. The oxygen does seep its way in and seep its way out. In a stainless steel barrel, it doesn't do any of this. So it highlights those tones of, to me, I was tasting green pear, like that fresh, hard, you bite into it, you can feel the crunch, that green pear quality really comes out of here. And that comes from the stainless steel side, where it's giving us some of these, kind of tart tones to go with the ripeness of the fruit and the oak that comes through here. Really, really beautiful. The one thing I would mention, and I had mentioned this before for a number of you who were on early, I decided to pour all of my wines in a white wine glass. I'm a sommelier. I worked on the floor of restaurants for 13 years prior to joining the Miller family. And this is the glass that I tasted almost every single wine out of. When Nicholas came and saw me in Las Vegas and I had first experienced the Nacido wines, I tasted out of this glass. It was, for me, the sort of catch-all glass. You can put Cabernet in here, you can put Syrah in here, you can put Chardonnay, you can put Sauvignon Blanc, you can put Riesling, you can put dessert wine. Anything can go into a white wine, all-purpose glass. And if I had to say, you had no wine glasses in your house, or if you're drinking out of a mason jar today, the one glass to pull out would be a all-purpose white. But that doesn't mean that there aren't glasses that are actually suited towards certain styles and certain grape varietals. For example, another fellow master sommelier, her name is Andrea Robinson. She makes these glasses and they're called the One. She calls it the One because she literally has two versions, a white and a red, and it's the one that you need.
Okay.
Okay, so the one glass you should need, period. And the great thing about it is that it is sturdy. It's got a nice large bowl to it that typically at the top of most wine glasses will hold about 5 ounces, which is a good sized glass of wine, right? You may want to refill it during dinner, but 5 ounces is a good amount. And this can go in the dishwasher. The one thing I always recommend when looking for glassware is try to find something that has titanium or not lead in it. Lead tends to break, whereas titanium can really do much better without breaking. Now, you can get into the more unique glassware like this one here. This one was a false tasting glass that I had bought during my studies. This is meant for oaked white wines for you to be able to tell if something was wrong during winemaking. So winemakers use this a lot because they'll taste their wine in here and it traps at the top all of the different aromatics in there. But it also gives a really intense concentration. If I poured my Viognier in here, all of the flower tones would be concentrated. You get a lot less of the pear fruit and the tropical tones, and it would be much more about the flowers. So I kind of reserve this for old wines when I want to get more out of it. If you did decide to have two glasses at your house, I definitely would recommend something like a Bordeaux stem. Again, this is a all-purpose red wine glass. It's fantastic for kind of letting the wine breathe and show as much as it can, because when you pour 5 ounces, it's only up to right about there. So the rest of the headspace is all oxygen and gives you a lot of area to spin it around. This is really great for things that are young or tannic wines, something that, maybe you open 2 hours early and then by the time dinner gets there, you pour in a big glass so it can have a little bit more opportunity to breathe. Now, the last one, and some of you may be saying, well, I was in a wine shop and they told me I need to buy a Zalto glass. They were $85 a piece, but they're the best thing that you can ever have. I have a Zalto glass here. I probably use it 2 times a year. It is probably the least used glass in my whole pantry, and I have many of them. I even use this false tasting glass more than I use this Zalto glass. And you know the reason why? I'm scared to break it. I don't want to pour wine in here. And then obviously what happens, we drink a little bit of wine and now we have to wash it by hand and we end up breaking it in the sink. These are amazing glasses. Sure, they are expensive, but I almost never use them. So I go for the old steady glass, hard, can go in your dishwasher, and it's easy to go from there. I would open it up right now and see if anybody has any questions about the Viognier before we hop into one of mine. And I certainly know Nicholas because we had talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the Pinot Noir. Give 5 seconds for people to find their mute button if they're asking questions. 4, 3.
I'm in. Okay. All right, Will, thank you. Thank you. What about the stemless? I didn't see you pick up a stemless wine glass. What's your thought on that?
I have lots of them. Most of them are plastic. primarily because we have a pool and I want to be able to bring them outside during the hot Las Vegas summers and enjoy wine. They are nice if you're a fast drinker. I can drink fairly quickly, especially if I'm drinking something that I want ice cold, right? The problem with one of those stemless glasses is that temperature, while we might not think about it, is really important for enjoying a wine. If you have a vibrant, bright white wine, it can handle getting warmed up a little bit. But if you have a delicate wine like a Pinot Noir that's best served at 60, 65, and you're holding onto this glass and your hand is warming it up, it's going to heat up the wine more than you necessarily want it to. And so for me, there's nothing wrong with using them. They are actually really nice for the shape, but they're best done when you're drinking a little faster, or if you put a glass, an ice cube or two into the glass.
Perfect sense. Thanks so much.
Of course. All right, I'm going to move on to the Pinot Noir. So as I mentioned in the video,
There was one text question that was a little silly, but I will read it to you. It was, so my stainless steel Yeti isn't going to cut it. So taking that question literally, but also kind of if we don't have great stemware, is metal, ceramic, plastic, kind of, if we're in limited circumstances, what should we choose?
I will tell you a story. I was just in Minnesota last week showing these wines to some amazing retail accounts. And many of the accounts that I was tasting at had no glassware at all. They didn't have a stainless steel Yeti. They didn't have a plastic tumbler. We were tasting out of little teeny tiny plastic cups. And the great thing is, if the wine is good enough, it's going to taste great no matter out of what. So the moral of the story is drink good wine and it will be fantastic. And the funnel and surgical tubing, Adam, if you can drink a whole bottle that way, bravo. I left that at my bachelor party before I got married.
I learned it from watching Marshall.
Another question. First, a comment.
Sure.
We count among our friends the first master sommelier in the United States. You may know Eddie Osterlin.
Eddie, yeah, of course.
And what you go through to become who you are is amazing. And I compliment you. I mean, that is just a grueling thing. But we so appreciate all of you doing it because you share with all of us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, so the question is, you've got this incredible vineyard with blocks that are renowned. And we've known lots of the wineries and winemakers and collected wines from there. So is there a business model change now where you're really trying to do, and it's happened to other places, where you're really trying to say, hey, we got some of the best fruit in the world. We're going to find a way to make some of the best wines in the world. And that's our goal.
I would definitely let one of the Millers jump in for sure.
So I can speak to that. I'm trying to look at who was asking the question, but
Rick Harris, class of 71. Old guy.
Sorry, with all that, trying to scan over the top so I can address directly. But
He's under my name.
I'm under my wife's name.
all right. Well, great question.
She's younger.
She knows Zoom.
So I think the answer to your question is probably not a direct answer because we don't see those as mutually exclusive strategies. The amount of wine that we make for this estate program is so small. All in, it's under 3,000 cases a year. And so really our goal with the estate program is really try to be kind of the truest sense of what we think showcases Bien Nacido, as opposed to either a house style or kind of trying to make a wine. Our family does have other wine labels where we are very much more focused on making a style of wine that we either want to internally consume, right? Or we think it's commercially saleable. But specifically with this estate program, the idea and the concept behind it was really to be the showcase of the vineyard, of trying to showcase what we thought is the best example and most transparent example of Bien Nacido Chardonnay, Viognier, Syrah, Grenache, Pinot, whatever we're making. So if you go back to kind of the video at the beginning when Will was talking about the size of the vineyard, it's very unique in where it stands in the landscape of really the world of viticulture. Is that there's no other example like Bien Nacido in the world. As my brother shared earlier, it's the most vineyard designated vineyard in the world, meaning the most amount of other wineries that do a single vineyard designation. And the reason for that is there's really no other example where there's that confluence of geographic size. The Bien Nacido is a larger vineyard. And with that attention to detail that goes down to that number of producers really making their highest end wine. So you're taking that Burgundian model of tiny rows going to specific producers and layering it into a much larger quantity model within Bien Nacido. And so our customer base is just as robust as it's ever been as far as selling grapes to outside wineries. And we couldn't be prouder of the wineries we get to work with today. We think that we're still seeing some of the best examples of wines in the state coming out of the vineyard in the hands of our winemakers. But this is really meant to be our own estate expression of singularly focusing on this. It's not a wine in a portfolio like exists with other wineries. They're showing their Bien Nacido among others, is that this was meant to showcase. So I feel like that's a cop-out answering because you're asking for a direct question of, what's changing. So we see this as an addition to our business strategy of adding in our own state wine as opposed to necessarily changing the model. Bien Nacido is still first and foremost a vineyard. The vast majority of grapes are going to our customer wineries, still making fantastic wines as well. But
That's a fair answer, and cheers to success with all of that.
Now, I would highlight here that on your labels, there's one very important word at the top under Bien Nacido. It says estate. Now, estate is the highest category. Remember, I learned a lot about not only different wines, but about wine law, right? The TTB sort of has a pyramid of quality, right? At the lowest end of it, you have American wine. American wine means you could grab grapes from Texas Hill Country, you can grab some from Washington, you can grab some from Long Island, New York, blend it all together. It doesn't have to have any grape attached to it. It doesn't have to have any vintage attached to it. And it can just be kind of anything that you want to put together. At the very top end, though, is estate wine. Estate wine means that you have to be in control of the vineyard itself. It has to be fermented and bottled on the property. And so estate is something specifically different from Bien Nacido vineyard when we talk about the estate wines, right? We have our winery on the estate. And so we bring our fruit from sometimes just 100 yards away to the vineyard. And so we are there from every small step, from bud break, where our winemaker is probably racking the wines, getting ready to bottle right around February, all the way through the middle part of the harvest season or the growing season, where he can keep an eye on what's happening every single day, all the way into making that ultimate decision on when to pick, because that truly is the decision that a winemaker, their first and most important decision before many of them in the cellar. And so the estate aspect of this is what truly separates from any of our wonderful fruit partners, right? Because they can't use the term estate because they're taking the fruit to their wonderful wineries, but elsewhere that aren't on the property. And I think that is important when you're kind of tasting the wine side by side. There is only one Bien Nacido estate where there are many wonderful examples of Bien Nacido vineyard. The Pinot Noir is one of those that is an amalgamation of all of the different portions of the vineyard that we try to highlight. A lot of the parts of the vineyard, we have gone to what we believe epitomizes greatness in the vineyard. For example, the Syrah that we have here, it all comes from Block Z. Block Z is up on this exposed bluff. It overlooks the ocean. You can see the ocean on a great day without any clouds, and it is very windy. Whereas the Bien Nacido Pinot comes from 6 different blocks. And as I mentioned before, right, we have a sort of V-shaped property. In the valley, it gets so much more heat. We have one block behind the winery called San Vicente. It's the most concentrated, highest density block that we have. It's on 6,700 vines per acre, which is quite compact. It's very, very dense in the world of vines. It cannot be worked with a tractor. It has to be worked by hand. It's on a fairly steep surface, but that gets a lot more heat to it and brings us the more black fruit that we get in the wine, the cola, the black cherry kind of qualities. We have up in the hillsides, way up at the top of the vineyard, block 40, that's on this exposed limestone. And the vines there, when you come out to the vineyard, which I hope all of you get a chance sometime soon to do, when we take you up there, we planted those vines in the early 2000s, and they still look like babies. They're about this big around because it's so windy and constantly beat up by the wind that they have a hard time growing and getting bigger. Even the wind can sometimes defoliate them or take off the leaves when they're young. What comes from there is that pomegranate and cranberry kind of quality, where it gives you the precision in the middle of the palate. Then we kind of talk about the bench, the side that runs along that long exposed valley. And that's where the rest of the fruit comes from. Some of it from heavier clay soils that give us the roundness in the mid palate. Some of it come from our very oldest vines in block N and Q. Some of it comes from as far east as the property goes in block 1. And I particularly like block 1 because block 1, it's on this little hillside slope. So we get all of the beautiful eastern exposure. Eastern sun is the great sun. It is the cool sun. It's the sun that just allows the vine to work without anything kind of pushing it along too much. So the sun comes over, we get the top of the hill where it's the beautiful mid part of the day. And then you get the western sun. The western sun, and I know this, most of us know this, right, is the hot exposed sun. It's when, if you're skiing, for example, in the morning you woke up and you're bundled up and you have your jacket. By the afternoon, when you're getting that western sun, you're unzipping your jacket or taking your jacket off completely because it's the hot sun. And so block 1 gives us everything in just a few rows that run over the middle. And by combining those all into one, we get the Bien Nacido Estate Pinot. It's not just my opinion on it or the fact that Nicholas loves this wine the most from this vintage, but we have thus far received 3 96-point scores for this wine. If you're across the pond and look towards Decanter magazine, which is one of Europe's most respected print and online wine magazines, Decanter gave this 96 points. In the United States, Jeb Dunnick gave us 96 points. And a sort of national press called International Wine Report has given us 96 points. So it's not just us drinking our own, and loving it so much that press has loved it as well. And the beauty about it is we have not seen a vintage, at least as far as I've been part of the team, and that's been for almost 5 years, where we haven't seen consistently 90+ scores. And most of the time it's 94 and 95. I only mention scores because, if you get one really high point, someone may have loved it and it might not have, been as consistent. You could get a 98 and you can get a 89. The beauty is that everyone who tastes these wines, at least as a critical acclaim, tends to agree that the complexity and the concentration of these wines is paramount, right? We are not only reflecting what Santa Barbara and Santa Maria Valley taste like in one glass, but also hopefully setting a standard as well for what Santa Barbara can do. And I can tell you, when Nicholas and I had started talking about why I loved and was passionate about the wines from this region, it's because this is an overlooked part of California history. Marshall mentioned it, right? In the 70s, this was the resurgence of grape growing in California. And, it's one of these places that if you're in LA, it takes 3.5 hours to come see us. If you're in San Francisco, by car, it takes 4 hours. But with that, you have authenticity. You have farmers who are in their vineyard every day. You have winemakers who are up to their arms and sometimes knees in the barrels. You have, a true kind of spirit of farming. And I think that showcases itself in the glass the same way that some of the greatest sort of undiscovered wine regions in the world have as well. So the best thing you could ever do is continue to not only ask wherever you go, your retail shops or your restaurants, hey, do you have Bien Nacido wines on the list? But also just look for Santa Barbara. They are really, really fantastic wines across our whole region. And that's why I'm so excited to work with wines like these. To me, I think I talked about a lot of the different flavors you get, the black cherry and the cola, the pomegranate. But the beauty about what Bien Nacido tastes like in terms of Pinot Noir is that brown spice along the back end, that sort of toasted mace or nutmeg kind of quality. And it has a little bit of this light milk chocolate tone. And that is classic across all Bien Nacido wines. And it's also what makes it so soft and supple. In our region, we have the luxury of waiting for fruit to ripen. This year, 2021, was one of the coldest vintages we've had in a long time, since 2011. And we barely hit the 90s last week. You want warmth at the end of the season. And the reason this is important is we all know how to cook the best brisket, right? We turn the oven up to 500. You stick it in there for an hour and a half and you've got a soft and luscious brisket, right? No, not at all. You want to put it low and slow, right? Whether it's in a crock pot or whether it's in your oven or a smoker, 15 hours at 185 and you get that soft and luscious kind of rendering of fat. Not only would brisket taste great with this, but also we have that choice for these low, slow days where we can decide, you know what? I don't have to pick today. It's not quite there. And you're not rushed by the fact that it's going to rain or it's too hot. We get the luxury of time. And that's one of the best things about this part of California for the fruit. I will jump in here and I will talk about serving temperature. This is a rule of thumb. Use it how you prefer. But my rule of thumb for white wines and typically champagne is if you're going to drink them today, put them in your fridge. And then when you want to drink it, set a timer for 20 minutes, put it in your freezer for 20 minutes. It's going to give you that nice chill that's going to highlight some of the zesty lemon lime fruits in almost any white wine. But then it's going to have time to warm up in your glass if it's something oaky like a Chardonnay. Red wines, on the other hand, you can take it from your wine fridge if you have one, which my wine fridge is about 60 degrees. Or if you don't have a wine fridge and you have it on the counter, set a timer for 20 minutes and stick that in the freezer. The freezer is going to give you enough time to chill down your red to about 62 to 65 degrees. And that's going to be the best for any red wine, whether it be a rich red wine like the Syrah, that's a little darker and more intense, or a lighter red wine like Pinot Noir. And it'll give you the best experience for temperature in your wine. And that's something that I particularly make sure that the wines are at the right temperature. Before we jump into the Syrah and some questions that are broad, anybody have any questions about the Pinot for now that I can highlight?
We have one question from earlier that was actually about the Master Somm program, and I wanted to make sure it got highlighted. That do you have to get recertified every year as a Master Somm, or is it one and done?
It is a one and done process. You know, with such a low pass rate, I wouldn't say that, hey, you know, every single Master Sommelier should be able to pass tasting. But I bet you I could pass tasting today. If you put 6 glasses in front of me that were classic wines and I needed to get 75% of the available points like we require, I could pass tasting. I like wine, right? And it's something I practice a lot. Whereas my nose in the books, where I was doing 16 or 18 hours a week and working a full-time job, I don't know that I would have the dedication to do that and recertify every year. It is something we have talked about as a board. Remember, we're a small organization where we have said, Eddie Osterland, for example, who passed as the first American Master Sommelier, we want to know that Eddie is learning about new and upcoming wine regions, the same as the people who are studying and passing last week. And so it's more about creating programming and offering that to our membership in order so that they can stay educated. Greece is a wonderful wine region. So it's more about sending out maybe a 6-pack of Greek wines and making a video by our membership to say, hey, this is what's happening in Greece now, but there is no requirement to recertify. Having a newborn, I might not have passed this year. But good question. I'm going to move into the Syrah, and then we can definitely open it up to any questions about wine, the Master Sommelier exam, the Nacido vineyard, what people have done since they've graduated. But the Syrah is this wine that definitely has youth evident in it, just like the Viognier. When you take a sip of it, this is a wine that has tannic structure. It has grip. It has intensity. It's a wine that you want to drink in a bigger glass if you're serving it for dinner. And the number one thing you want for this wine is fat and salt. I don't care what your preference for fat or salt is. If you want something like roasted onions that are cooked down in a vegetarian stock, and you just finish it with margarine that tastes like butter but brings oil to the party, it's going to be great. If you want that smoked brisket that I talked about, but the best, and if you are a steak fan, the pièce de resistance with Syrah is a ribeye, because it has all of that intramuscular fat that sort of cooks out as it comes to a perfect medium. And Syrah is the ultimate way to cut through the fattiness of any of this. And fat does a cool thing. It balances the tannins, but it also, when you drink something that has beautiful acidity and aromatics and tannin like this, it makes you want to take another bite. If you've ever had A5 Japanese Wagyu, true Japanese Wagyu, where you only want to eat a piece that's that large, you want to have a glass of Syrah standing by so that you can make every bite savor. The fat melts on your tongue, and then you want to take another bite because you finished it with a beautiful taste of Syrah. And our Syrah is particularly unique because I haven't tasted many Syrahs in the world that have an orange zest kind of quality like this. It's consistent. It comes out in certain vintages. It goes away a little bit in certain vintages. 2016. It smells like perfectly ripening, like mandarin blossoms. It's amazing. The 2019 vintage here, it's also pretty present. It kind of comes out as if you've ever used like mandarin or orange blossom water to make a cocktail or to add into like Moroccan food into your rice, it comes out as that. And it's really beautiful. And it's part of what makes the Nacido Syrah different from any other Syrah in the world. Of course, we have the black fruits, blackberry, kind of this boysenberry fruit quality, and white pepper or black pepper, which is a common theme in all Syrah. But that orange zest is something that is, I would say, entirely unique in the world, and something that you can only get from this bottle of wine that you cannot find anywhere else, no matter what the comparisons, period. This does come from just one block up on this beautiful bluff that overlooks, like I said, the ocean. It has 99% Syrah and 1% Viognier. No, we did not take this and just dump it in there. It is co-fermented along with the Syrah so that it lends itself this color and complexity and a little bit of the high-toned aromatics to it. And we do it as a matter of course every single year. Sometimes if a big year, we'll get 4% Viognier. Sometimes in a lower yield year, we'll use 1 or 2%, but it's something we do consistency. So there is a little bit of white grape in this red wine, but fermented during it. It's one that I want to take another sip of while I open it up to questions. And I'm going to take the spotlight off myself so we can kind of open it up to everybody.
Hello again, it's Rick Karras.
Sure.
71. So here's my question. This to me is a little bit like more of an old world Syrah. It doesn't have some of the jamminess some of the Syrahs have here in the US or in the New World.
Sure.
How is this, and if I'm off, tell me, but how is this going to age? Because I love a Syrah when, you know, the Rhone wines, that when they age them.
So you remember that 2016 that I was talking about? You know, I buy a little bit of our wines every year because I want to store them for long-term aging. This wine will, no problem, age for 25 years or 30 years in a perfect cellar. In fact, you know, the luxury of being able to taste it now is that you can see just how vibrant it is. To me, it's like vibrating with energy. This is a wine that is going to live because of that energy for 25 or 30 years. And if you're looking for what you were talking about, that rah kind of thing, it's black olive tapenade. It is kind of a bacon fat. It is wild animal pelt. You know, these flavors that are certainly less fruity and more savory, that will come out with, I'd say, 6 to 8 years of cellaring. Or if you put this in a decanter for, you know, 24 hours, those will also start to show themselves. It's just the vibrancy of the youth. Like I said, that is, you know, it's like your first car, right? You know, I had a Honda Civic hatchback, but I certainly wanted to drive it like it was a Camaro. It's one of those wines that, hey, it's gonna show its maturity a little bit slower because, you know, it's just eager to go. And I guess it kind of reflects, I'll speak for myself, kind of how I am.
Thank you.
Of course. Let me highlight Nicholas on here and Marshall as well, so they can jump in too.
You're gonna allow us to start asking you questions, Will?
Oh, I think you've asked all of the questions you need of me, but hey, sure. Maybe there's questions about the vineyard or the history, or you can tell stories about tubing down the Cuyama when the Twitchell Reservoir, is let loose.
But yeah, no, we'd certainly be happy to entertain any questions, but we also know there's now a crowd with 3 bottles of open wine in front of them. So if that is your preference to enjoy the evening, please feel free. We really appreciate you guys joining us for tonight. We appreciate the art of Matteo Gallo being viewed here, I think, for the first time this evening. There he is, the artist. And kicking off homecoming here for 2021. Certainly hope that this could be in person in future years. And I'm very hopeful for next year. It's my reunion cycle, class of 02, that we get to get back on the Bowdoin campus.
I just want to say thank you, Nick and Shelley, and everyone involved at Bien Nacido for having us. It was wonderful to have this event.
Thanks, Matt.
And Lindsay raised her hand. Would someone, can you see me, anybody, while I'm talking? If not, would you spotlight me one more time? Because I did want to mention what to do if you have so many bottles open, and what to do. Of all of the beautiful contraptions that they make out there, they make the pump, right, that you can pull oxygen out. There are 2 important things you can do. First, you can go get yourself a Bowdoin stopper with a polar bear on it, so you can support in that way, right? So you can put a stopper into your bottle. The second one, and the most easy one that you can do, is keep a mason jar around, right? Now, I've always found, and we even keep jars like that we get from pickles. We washed one out today. They come in all different sizes, right? 6 ounces, 8 ounces, 12 ounces. And if you have any wine left over, pour it in as high as it'll go. Usually up to the top is best. Close it up and keep it in your fridge. And it will stay in your fridge if you filled it up all the way for weeks if you can't finish the bottles tonight. And the great thing about it is that you're trying to avoid oxygen, and you're trying to avoid heat, and you're trying to avoid light. If you fill it up high enough, a bottle of wine stored in one of these mason jars will do an exceptional job. And to tell you I'm not lying here, that I do this on my own, I will show you. Here is a small jar of wine that I have filled up and I keep in my fridge for when I need, an extra glass. And I think this is a 6 ounce pour, which is the perfect amount once 5 o'clock comes around. So I want to thank everybody as well. It has been a pleasure to present to you all.
Oh, sorry. Well, it looked like Lindsay had her hand up, but now I've lost her. Is she still on for a question?
Don't worry, Nicholas, I'm still here.
All right. Well, I've got my mute hovering over your screens just in case.
I was just wondering why the vineyard looks so far away in your picture, and why Shelley keeps disappearing into it. That was my question.
Well, I think we learned in an academic environment that no question is a stupid question. So there, I guess, are fallacies in all of our education, right?
That was a very intellectual answer. Thank you very much, Nicholas Miller.
I have a question. Is your tasting room open to the public?
Absolutely. It's very polar bear friendly. Please reach out, come visit us. The big news is that while we've been operating a tasting room in a little town in wine country called Los Alamos, so it's just north of Santa Barbara, our family's big news is that we actually have built an estate tasting room on site that's going to be opening in spring of 2022. Right on the ranch itself. So we're very excited about it. Certainly hope that you guys will all come out and join us. I don't know, Rody, is information shared or kind of through the email? Is there a way that folks can reach out if they're interested? Please do. You can look us up for for either Marshall or I. If you look up our websites, Bien Nacido Estate or Miller Family Wine Company, just put our name in front of it with the first initial and last, N Miller or M Miller, and at one of those domains, and we'd love to take care of it.
Thanks, Nicholas. We can send that to anyone who's registered, right? We can just let everyone know what that is, so you don't have to write that down. So, but thank you for giving me an entree to say thank you. But there was one other question there about how long can you store white wine opened in the refrigerator?
And I was answering it directly, but you know, a wonderful thing is that I can keep this jar and like, look, you can see the oxygen bubble in there. It's not very big. I can keep this jar in my fridge for 4 weeks, no problem. Red wines are actually better and they'll store longer than whites because whites have so many volatile compounds that can sort of dissipate. The only one that's difficult is champagne because in the transfer process of pouring the bubbles into there, you lose a lot. But I have opened a 4-week-old bottle, a glass of champagne, and it still was sparkling and still tasted fantastic. The oxygen is the number one thing. So start saving your mason jars and find the right size. Fill it up all the way. Because what happens if you fill it up all the way and you have some left? You drink it, right? You drink the rest.
So you're telling me you have no open bottles of wine in your fridge? You just pour them into jars?
No, I have like 6 of these that are all different. And you know, the funny thing is I forgot to label them. So now I get to play Master Sommelier and open it and taste it and go, oh yeah, this is the Kane Concept 2012. You should write a note of what you put in there.
So Megan Gillis / Jillian McDonald looked like they had a question.
Hi, this is Megan Gillis, class of 07. I was wondering what your favorite wine was. What's your favorite one?
And who's this question being directed to, Megan Gillis?
Oh, to Nicholas Miller and Shelley Miller.
Okay.
Megan Gillis, class of 07.
Well, I appreciate the thorough introduction on multiple occasions. Thank you for getting that in there. So once again, I feel like I'm being asked a question where I don't get to give a direct answer. So I promise not all my answers are like this because it's probably pretty annoying for everyone to hear. But for me, I feel like wine is very situational as opposed to having a favorite. That, you know, to claim one red wine or one white wine would be kind of neglect the opportunity of what the occasion was. I do believe that Pinot Noir is the most versatile of all the wines. So kind of what one wine you can pull out for anything. We drink a lot of Pinot Noir at our house, but Shelley's a white wine drinker. So oftentimes we have 2 bottles of wine open at our house, a Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir. Marshall, do you have a different answer?
No, I think you said it really well. It's wine is a little bit like music. There's kind of, you know, there are wines for when I'm kind of feeling serious and wines for when I'm feeling sad. And so it is a waffly answer. I guess of the 3 that we were tasting today, I would be inclined to be Viognier on an outside picnic.
Oh, interesting.
Pinot Noir with most dinners, and Syrah as the cocktail party wine by itself. That would be my personal kind of moods and moments for these wines.
Thank you, Megan Gillis from class of 07. Very good question.
Thank you.
Brian had asked a question in the chat about, do you have to get every single wine right on the Master Sommelier exam? You have to get 75% of all of the points available. And to put it in perspective, a red wine may have between 18 and 22 points. So you have to get 75% of all of the points, which means you could nail 2 wines absolutely perfectly, getting 90% of it. And you could get a little bit of the, you know, major points on the 3rd wine, but you better get 5 out of 6 right, or else you are not going to pass the exam. And that puts in perspective why we only had 2 people pass this year, right? It's a lot tougher than it looks. And Ben Burke, I think it said 99 class, had asked about how does one study for the Master Sommelier exam? You find a passion for wine, and then you work in restaurants, great restaurants with, you know, 3,000 position wine lists, and serve guests for, you know, a decade or more while studying. And that is really the only right way to do it. I mean, yeah, you can take all your time and you could spend plenty of time sitting in front of a book, but if you have not experienced recommending wines over and over and over again and have the producer knowledge and having tasted tens of thousands of wines, you probably can't effectively get it done. Awesome question. If there are any others, I'm going to put my email in the chat as well, so that we can obviously share with everybody. But yeah, I have really enjoyed this. You know, anytime, which I don't actually get to drink these wines every day. So anytime I get to taste them, I'm very eager and very happy.
All right, thank you, Bowdoin, very much. Happy homecoming. Thank you, President Rose, for joining
Nicholas
us.
and Shelley and Marshall and Will, thank you very much. This was incredible. And thank you everybody for joining us. Great kickoff to homecoming. We're really excited to have people back on campus for the first time in, I don't know, a year and a half. So it's going to be great, not tomorrow, Saturday. So thank